come in late. Since Ozil will be talking, I'll be watching. But Amy, if you see anybody and I don't immediately let them in, if you'll do that, I appreciate it. So, yay, welcome. Bless you, Kathy.
Yeah, I'm going to mute here because I'm going to do it again.
Oh, okay. So here comes Red. So welcome to the Monday night training of Through the Eyes of Authors. So Ozil sent me a note earlier today that says, because he was thinking about Author Talk. So Author Talk is the podcast. This is the membership. So the membership includes Monday night training, Friday mastermind, and then I have a calendar with a link to my calendar if anybody wants any specific help from me. And people have definitely been taking me up on it in the last few weeks. So I'm excited about that. We have 2 new members coming into the group and possibly coming into our clients in January. And I talked to both of them today. So I want to make the announcements tonight quick so I can turn it over to Ozil, but I also want to take a couple minutes to give people some time to come in. And here comes one of our new people that I just talked to today. So Diane Bohm, I know that's not how you pronounce her last name, but I'll get that right later. Okay, so for this week, no mastermind on Friday. We have Thursday will be Thanksgiving. Friday is Black Friday. So we start the weekend full of book promotion on Friday. So all of you that have something going on for the weekend, just know that we're going to be hitting it hot and heavy all day Friday, and we're going to be on Zoom a lot. And so, so be ready. Diane, I know you told me how to pronounce your last name, but I totally forgot.
BAME, like BAME.
BAME, okay.
Thank you.
With looking at that O and saying A did not ring for me. So here comes your friend, Julie. I forgot to ask you how you know Julie.
We met through Authors Marketing Guild.
Oh, well, that's Alan. And so
Yes,
you're in the
Alan.
marketing guild. Okay, good. There's Julie. Hello, Julie. I had the call with Diane today, and she is definitely going to join the group. So Julie, thank you. And Julie, so all of you, affiliate. Julie, if you have not signed up for the affiliate program, please sign up. If any of you have not signed up for the affiliate program, here's the deal. Through the Eyes of Authors is free for the month of December. And everything we do in December is going to be pushing for people to join the membership in January. We've got all kinds of special deals, everything going on. Amy's been really working on this. And so if you sign up in December, when they're coming to the membership for free, then when they start paying, when Diane starts paying in January, she's already said she's joining, then you're going to get your affiliate commission. So, and you get that commission every month as long as they're a member. So Diane, you already talked about some people you're telling me about. So we're going to be talking about that as we get to the 1st of December. Red, if you can get our mutual friend back in, then you could get an affiliate commission for Hyatt Ives. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Well, I thought you were talking about what you know.
Who?
Another friend of ours.
Oh, okay. Well, that one too. So, okay. So, any other announcements that we need to make? We're not going to announce all those sales and stuff going on, all the holiday sales. I do want you to know that the 12 Days of Christmas is going to be also 12 days of Facebook Live. So be ready. And we've not worked out the details of how that's going to work or the dates, but it will be coming up possibly next Monday and going then for 12 days. So we'll have all those details worked out after this week. So now I want to introduce to you, I'm sorry we have even a smaller crowd, but maybe more will come in. I want to introduce you to Ozil. Ozil, I'm going to let you say your last name. I don't want to screw it up for you. So Ozil is head of Pod Houston. I've heard him speak twice now at the Houston Writers Guild Indiepalooza, and always has a big crowd there to hear him. I joined his group after this year when he was speaking, and very active group, Pod Houston. So I know you have a membership, also a paid membership, Ozil. So tell us about that and any other offer you want to make. So Ozil has just he has just figured out how to make podcasting profitable. So we'll say that, and I'll let you go with it, Ozil, and I'm excited to hear you myself.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hello,
And
hello,
you have a
hello.
great podcast voice.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. And Sandy, Amy, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. As Sandy mentioned, we met a few weeks back at the Indiepalooza, which is awesome. It's a great event, the Houston Writers Guild. I've been speaking at that event for the last, I believe, 3 to 4 years,
Wow.
if I'm not mistaken, to talk about podcasting to a bunch of creatives, authors, writers, which is awesome. Normally I'm speaking to other people that are interested in podcasting, but I love speaking to a specific niche, a tribe of creatives that are passionate about their message and creating a body of work through their passion. And so it's an honor to be here. Before we begin, how many of you currently have a podcast? Amy has one, of course. She does. Yeah, Sandy, I know. Anybody else know? Okay. How many of you haven't heard the term podcast up to this point? Don't know about podcasting? Okay, so everybody, okay, that's makes me really happy because about 3 to 4 years ago, nobody knew, and even podcasting was pretty popular to a certain degree. Nobody really knew what a podcast meant or what it was. Now, we're seeing a big emergence of podcasting as an opportunity to really literally use your voice to expand and build your network, to build influence. And it's just been such a great opportunity to be a part of this podcasting movement. A little bit about myself before I kick off to a few slides, and we're going to do a Q&A because I definitely want to make sure that I answer all of your questions. My name is Ozil DeBastos, and I am originally from Chicago. I've been living here in Houston for the last 12 years. I've been podcasting for over 7 years. I have a podcast called No Permission Needed, which really focuses on helping creative entrepreneurs learn about business and marketing and branding. Close to 1 million, actually, we just reached 1 million downloads globally. So it's really been a successful podcast. It's been, I launched Pod Houston, which is a podcasting community about 2 years ago with over 1,000 members, both in our Facebook group and also in our email list. So we're seeing a steady growth, not only through people that are creatives like ourselves, but also business owners and corporate people that are now jumping into podcasting because they see the opportunity to really humanize their message through voice. And voice marketing is becoming. I'm sorry? Or the voice?
Did somebody say anything?
It was Red. He was off mute.
Red, okay.
Okay.
So anyway, so yes, so it's becoming, voice marketing is becoming really, it's booming right now. And I think we're going to continue seeing a big movement of voice marketing and more creatives like ourselves getting into podcasting. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share something with you. Hit share. We're doing this here. All right. You guys can see that, right? Yeah, thumbs up. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, so author's guide to building a brand authority. And a few things I want to cover today is what is a podcast? I'm going to break it down for you. The benefits of starting a podcast, building brand authority. What does that mean? What does that look like? What does that sound like? how to avoid some of the biggest podcasting mistakes if you are planning to possibly start a podcast in 2021, and of course, podcasting as it relates to storytelling. So let's jump right in, ladies and gents. So what is a podcast? So a podcast is simply radio on demand. It's listen to what you want when you want. The beauty about podcasting is that it's convenient, right? We're living in a very convenient society, convenient driven society. People like, curbside. That's the reason why curbside is becoming so popular. Uber disrupted the taxi industry because everything is quick, right? A click of a button, you're there. And with podcasting, with the click of a button, now you're plugged into information. And I like to look at podcasting as information and education on wheels. It's you can listen to a podcast as you're walking, as you're working out, etc. Podcast also is available at multiple distribution sites. So a podcast has a unique ability to be delivered on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, and all the other ton of podcatchers, as they call them. Basically, they're distribution channels. Spotify is a big one. At a click of a button. So this is done through an RSS feed, which means real simple syndication, really techie, but it's a term that you'll hear a lot with the podcasters is owning your own RSS feed. And the analogy that I like to give is when you own your own podcast, your own RSS feed, you're owning your own radio tower. So before, podcast was owned by Clear Channel, a lot of the big companies, right? But now podcasts can be produced by anyone. It could be produced by all of you, right? It's not exclusive to big name media companies anymore. Power to the people. So also podcast listenership is not playing any games. It's going super, super fast. As you can see in 2013, it was about maybe 13% of Americans that listen to podcasts. Seeing the cutoff here, so I'm not sure if you can see it, but 2019 it was about 32%, and now 2020 we're at 37%. So you're seeing a steady growth of podcast listenership throughout the years. Let's talk about the benefits of podcasting. What I love about podcasting is that it's a very simple format. And I know we're talking earlier before we all got on, we're talking to David and we're talking about blogging. And I actually had an opportunity to interview him. His name is Seth Godin, if you ever heard of him, but he's a great marketing guru. And he refers to podcasting as the new blogging. People are now consuming podcasting because it's the new form of blogging. And remember back in the days when people were writing blogs, and by the way, there's still room for the written word, of course, right? But now podcasting is the new thing. And the cool thing about podcasting is that there are people who just simply want to do podcasts because they enjoy talking about a topic, right? Sandy and Amy are very passionate about community and helping other authors share their story. That's their passion. That's their niche. Beautiful. Start a podcast and let's build community from that. But there's people that I know that start podcasts simply because they enjoy a topic. They love talking about home gardening or talk about, Netflix documentaries or the Star Wars Minute, where they're just Star Wars fanatics and they just want to talk about Star Wars, all day. The White Whale podcast, which is a very weird sound experimentation, really weird podcast, but huge following. And again, if you don't have to start a podcast simply to promote or market, there's people that just started just because they love talking about a specific topic. Another great thing about starting a podcast is that it's super economical, guys. It's really easy to maintain and start. A podcast is, let me break it down for you. It's really easy. It's a microphone, it's a computer, laptop, and a hosting service where you host your audio. And that's all you need to start. So the entry level to podcasting won't break the bank. You can literally start a podcast for under $100. The only thing, and we're not going to get really in depth with this presentation, but of course, investing in a great quality microphone is essential to a great podcast, right? Because this is a voice platform. So we want to make sure that audio sounds the best that we can deliver. Podcasting is a great opportunity to listen and connect with your audience in a new way. There's a lot of people that are just, reading blog posts and or watching videos, but there's something about listening to somebody's voice, that really brings them into an intimate ecosystem, right? And I think that's something that you don't get with any other platform. And podcasting definitely delivers that. Podcasting gives you the opportunity, excuse me, to inspire and motivate and to educate, right? You are the expert, you're passionate about something, you become the brand authority in that thing, right? And you build community around it. So it gives you the opportunity to share your message with the world. As I mentioned, with a click of a button, you are now streamed all over the world. How cool is that? And of course, brand authority. There's two things. So when people start a podcast, it's usually two formats. It's either an interview-based podcast, which is a great way to build your network, expand your network, right? It gives you permission to interview other thought leaders within your industry, and you can bring them on and you can introduce them to your world, and you could just build a really good, authentic relationship. And then you can also build influence and brand authority simply by sharing your voice, right? You become the leader of your industry and you just share, and that's how you build influence. So you get recognized as an industry leader, right? People are learning from you through osmosis, right? They're kind of the person listening into your conversation. There's great speaking opportunities. When I launched the podcast 7 years ago, I was able to land some speaking opportunities within the first year, simply by the relationships I built. Podcast also has given me sponsorship opportunities and advertising opportunities. Guys, this is a huge opportunity. There was about $73 million of advertising dollars invested in podcast. Why? Well, because advertisers are now interested in niches, right? There's a term that the riches is in the niches. And that is so true right now, moving forward, that the more niche you are, the better chance you have of really succeeding pretty much in any industry, but especially in a podcast. So I have a buddy of mine who has a fishing podcast, and fishing companies were reaching out to them because he was like, hey, listen, I have about 1,000, he only had 1,000 downloads, but fishing companies were saying, hey, listen, I want to give you money because these are 1,000 targeted potential customers. And I would rather invest money in paying you in comparison to spending a lot of money in newspaper ads or Facebook ads, etc. So now they're paying him, and he's making about $500 per episode. So he's making about $1,500 now a month right out the gate. So not too shabby, right? Just simply sharing what you love sharing. So great opportunity there. Book deals, guys. Publishing, big publishing companies are now gravitating towards podcast. They love authors that are implementing a voice marketing strategy to the books, to sell books, to expand brand awareness, to promote, to market. And I've actually had friends that are podcasters, bona fide podcasters, that got reached out to Penguin Publishing and said, hey, listen, we really love the message is consistent. You have a fan base. Let's give you a book deal. And a friend of mine, Srini Rao, he wrote a book called The Unmistakable Creative. It's a great book, and he got a book deal because of the podcast. And affiliate marketing opportunities, of course, is the easiest way to make money. So if you are promoting a software or a product or service, you can make money off this referral program approach. And of course, services. If any of you are coaches, mastermind hosts, you organize your events, a podcast is a great opportunity to sell your services in your masterminds and your coaching services. There's events now that are starting podcasts, and they're giving discounts to the listeners. So again, and here's the cool thing. You become the sponsor. Like, a lot of people's like, well, how do I get, the first sponsor? I'm like, wait a minute. There's a huge opportunity for you to become the first sponsor. Like, you become the first one. Like, how about if, I know we're speaking to authors here. If you're the writer, and before you kick off into your episode, you can say, hey, listen, this show is sponsored by the Rise and Grind book, this book. And by the way, Damon John, who, if some of you may or may not heard, he's the big shark in one of the big sharks in Shark Tank. He released a book called Rise and Grind, in a conjunction, launched this podcast. And he actually has been on several shows. And he said that the podcast gave him a big boost in book sales because he added a podcast component into his book promotion. So something to think about. Let's talk about how to avoid the biggest podcasting mistakes. So why do podcasts fail? And some of the biggest launch mistakes. Number one, lack of focus. Okay. And this is, I want to kind of dig into this because if you're considering starting a podcast, I want to kind of give you the lowdown on what to avoid here and the reasons why a lot of clients of mine that come back for coaching say, I made these big mistakes. What happened? And this is basically what I came up with. So they don't keep their eye on the prize, right? They want to have these massive Joe Rogan download numbers, and they want to be great right out the gate. But podcasting, just like any platform, like writing a book, or having a blog post or starting a YouTube channel, this is a marathon. This is not a race, and it takes time for you to get in the trenches and really develop your voice. A lot of us are starting podcasts and we're not trained broadcasters. I wasn't formally trained. I simply enjoyed my topic and I was very passionate and I just was consistent with it. So a huge mistake that a lot of podcasters make is that they just lack focus. They think that they can get in there and have these numbers and then be awesome and voila, they're rich, right? Doesn't work that way. Lack of niching. So is your podcast about interviewing entrepreneurs? And yes, I see that that's a misspelled word, entrepreneur. Or is it about interviewing entrepreneurs in the music industry? Okay. Somebody asked me, Ozil, if you were to start a podcast right now, would you have started, No Permission Needed, which is about creative entrepreneurs? And this space has gotten really saturated. And I was like, no, you know what? I would really even ultra niche it down. I would go maybe creative entrepreneurs over 30 or creative entrepreneurs over 40, or, maybe a dadpreneur podcast. So right now, if you want to start a podcast, the more niche you are, the better opportunity to have to really expand your reach. There's a lot of like entrepreneur podcasts where they interview entrepreneurs, right? For the best. It doesn't work. You're fighting a really uphill battle. So for authors, if you're like in the sci-fi niche, perfect. These are niches. And that's the beauty about the work that you're doing is that you're already niched down, right? It's just either nonfiction and fiction, then you can maybe even niche it down even more and really kind of target your audience. So lack of niching is a big mistake. Another one is, again, unrealistic expectations. Rarely people do have a profitable podcast. There's a lot of people that are jumping into podcasting because they want to make money out of it. And I use this acronym that I use with all my clients, and I use the word BAM, and it's BAM, like BAM. And it stands for brand, audience, monetize. So you do that in that order and you will succeed. And I believe this applies to anybody who's building a brand online. You nail down your brand, right? It's there. It conveys who your target audience, your messaging, the branded assets, the logo, everything is super crystal clear, and you have a brand. And then you build an audience. And once you build the audience, then you monetize. And then because people want to monetize a podcast after like 3 months, and I look at their download numbers and they're like 50 downloads. I'm like, no, it takes time. You got to get in the trenches. And you got to be able to attract advertisers when you have traction, when you have people that are actually plugged in, right? That's how advertising works. So you have to be realistic when you get into podcasting. This is an extension to the work that you do, to the books you write. Okay, this is not the thing that's going to make you rich. Simply, this is an opportunity for you to humanize your message and expand the work that you do. The lack of investment. So a lot of podcasters make the mistake of getting in and not investing in equipment. And simply they don't invest in a good microphone. They want to go on these cheap apps and feel like they want to launch a podcast. And then not to mention, they just don't want to invest time and energy into learning the art of voice and learning how to become a better podcaster. So again, that's another huge one that I see with a lot of my past clients. And then of course, the imposter syndrome. A lot of podcasts deal with self-doubt, right? They hate the sound of their voice, and I get it. It's a little uncomfortable. It takes time. But there's a lot of podcasters that feel like, well, there's other people that are super successful. How can I do it? But the beauty, and especially with the work, you understanding this as authors, as writers, is that you know that all of you have a different style. You have your different voice. You know, you have a different genre. You come in it with a different imagination, a different form of a different sense of creativity. And that's what I tell all of my clients when they come into podcasting. You have a unique voice. And what beautiful time than to really share your style, your voice, than through actually using your voice through a podcast. So that's another big issue that a lot of podcasters struggle with. 4 biggest launch mistakes, once again, I mentioned this, is bad audio quality. If you have the best content and your audio quality isn't up to par, people won't listen. As a matter of fact, I think there was a stat, and somebody shared this on a presentation, that they surveyed a bunch of YouTubers and people that were big YouTube consumers. And they were asking them, what made you turn off from this YouTuber? And a lot of them said the content was great, the presentation was amazing, but the audio quality was horrid. And I unplugged. And as podcasters, guys, the pros are here now. There's a reason why McDonald's started a podcast, Sephora, NPR, ESPN. The pros are playing in our sandbox. Podcasting was for independent creatives like ourselves, but now they're playing in the sandbox. And guess what? They're bringing all their fancy 17 production team. They're bringing on the fancy microphones, and they're coming in because they feel like there's an opportunity, right? And there's an audience, and they have all the equipment, and this is an easy layup for them, right? So as independent podcasters, as creatives, we got to make sure that we invest in audio quality. Okay, invest. You can buy yourself a great microphone for, $50. There's a great one. It's called Samson, Samson Q2U. And it's about $59. And I'm telling you, a lot of pro podcasters use it. It's a USB microphone and an XLR. So you can plug it directly to your laptop or your desktop and then record from there. And it gives you a great quality. So there's no excuse. If all of you start a podcast, I need to see microphones, not headphones, microphones with your podcast.
Will you repeat the name of that microphone that you just
Of course, Jeremy. It's a Samson, SAMSON, as in Nancy, and the letter Q, as in Qbert, 2U. And I'll make sure, Jeremy and everybody else, I'll make sure I'll leave some links down below for you. Because there's like low tier. So that's kind of like a low tier, but it's a great microphone. So especially like if you don't want to break the bank. Amazing. Highly recommended. And of course, mistake number 2, lack of consistency. Here's one, guys, that I want to make sure. If you decide to launch a podcast, whether it's next month or in 2021, make sure you stay consistent. If you release a podcast episode on Tuesdays at 6 a.m., release it on Tuesdays at 6 a.m. every single time. Imagine your favorite TV show. And imagine if it started, you loved it. And then the next week, you find out that the show doesn't start until, 9 o'clock. Or how about this? How about there's no show? Right? And then you may see it the following week. So you got to treat it like a pro. And just like anything else, just like the way you show up to write your books, you got to make sure that when it comes to creating content, you are consistent with the content. So, and this helps in cultivating trust with your listeners. And once you show up for them, they will show up for you. And that's definitely a promise strategy to grow your podcast, is be consistent. Another mistake is launch with 1 episode. If you decide to start a podcast, have 3 to 4 episodes in the can ready to go. And when you upload your podcast, you upload all 3 at the same time. And what you do is you try to, as they call, content batching. So you get maybe 6 podcast episodes already, recorded. And that way you are, you're starting off strong, and then you can go ahead and launch it. And you launch with 3 episodes. And this kind of helps with iTunes algorithm. They kind of see that you're a real player, and they give you a lot of love for that. So, and you have also the opportunity to land in You and Noteworthy if you start off with 3 to 4 episodes in the can. Undefined avatar. Now, this is big. Goes back to brand. If you don't know who you're talking to, if you don't know why you're launching the podcast or who this is for, then you run the risk of not having a successful podcast. We have to get comfortable, just like writing, right? There's a niche, there's a tribe for all of you, right? For sci-fi, for fiction, for drama, for crime. There's different niches. And I think as podcasters, what happens is that a lot of them say, well, I want a podcast, but I want to make sure that I appease everybody. Like, this is for everybody. And it doesn't work that way. And we have to be comfortable saying, this is for you, and this is not for you. And I think that if we are very clear and define who this is for, this gives us a lot more power, more strength coming into the podcast, as in building the tribe for a specific individual. So I always say, like, when I did a podcast, I would do like a sticky note, and I would write who that person I'm talking to, because sometimes it get lost, right? I had an interview-based show, so I was interviewing people, but sometimes you get caught up and you get a little selfish, and you forget that there are people that you want to serve. So I would put like a, it was for creative entrepreneurs. So I would put, this is Jessica, she works at Starbucks. She's a struggling artist, but she wants to build a brand online, and she wants to, make money making music. And I would make sure that Post-it note would be right there in my laptop. That way I know that I'm talking and I'm serving this individual. So make sure you know who and what you want your listener to feel. Very important. It's easy to kind of get selfish with a podcast, but know that if you want to build an audience, it's not about you, it's about them. So let's talk about some of the big podcasts. So Serial, how many of you have heard of this podcast? Any of you raise your hand? Anybody? Serial? No? Okay. It was a audio documentary documenting like crime stories that were happening. So it's a nonfiction podcast. This is the podcast that really kind of blew podcasts and made it kind of what's mainstream. Now it's super, super successful. It's a series. And then they have like different seasons. That's what I'm saying. Different seasons. It's seasonal podcasts. Super popular. Also The Moth, right? The Moth, True Stories Told Live. Another popular podcast. Hollywood and Crime by Wondery. It's another popular podcast. True Crimes, I believe is the name of the podcast, another successful podcast. So a lot of writers are now gravitating towards podcasts because, let's face it, guys, you guys are telling stories. You're storytellers. So when you talk about, really sharing a narrative, like what better way than to use your voice? This is the reason why audiobooks is $1 billion company, folks. It's $1 billion company because people are now plugging in. I'm noticing myself even before, like with podcasts. I love podcasts and I listen to them, but now I'm gravitating towards listening to audiobooks. I have an Audible membership because I love listening. I love walking and love listening to my favorite books. So now I'm not even picking up the books anymore. I'm going audio. So something to think about. Maybe if you can add an audio book component to your package, I think that would be a great strategy for you to implement because people are listening. And are they listening, guys? Are they really? Well, let's see. Serial got over 250 million downloads for the first 2 seasons. 175 million people downloads for season 1. The Mod podcast, the storytelling podcast, 2015, 500,000 weekly downloads. 2018, over 30 million downloads and counting. In the Wondery podcast, they have like a lot of true crime podcasts, over 41 million downloads. So why audio storytelling, voice plus narration equals just a companion of intimacy. This is just a great opportunity to, again, humanize your message and to inspire through storytelling, to connect through storytelling and educate your listeners through storytelling. So what is your story? What can you do to implement podcasts and you implement your voice into the work that you're currently doing? So that is something that is powerful. And of course, as authors, I challenge you just to think of other ways to implement that into the work that you do. Let's see. Can you guys see this real quick? Can you see this? I'm showing this. Okay, perfect. Okay, gotcha. I just switched here, Anya. So sorry. Okay, so look, these are some of the stats, latest. 75% of the U.S. Population, right, is familiar with the term podcasting. Let's see, 63% of podcast listeners are white, 27% of US podcast listeners have a 4. So this basically kind of gives you like an overall view of the stats. And I'll make sure that I post this link so you guys can really see the growth of podcasting. Here's one that was really cool. I mean, I'll make sure I highlight it. Over 60% of podcast listeners agreed to purchasing from the podcast host. How powerful is that? Over 60%. So you wonder why advertisers are interested in advertising with podcasters? Well, because the proof is in the pudding. People are actually building, podcast hosts are building trust with their listeners. And if they mention an affiliate program or a mastermind, they are more likely inclined to subscribe and purchase because the podcast host mentions it. How powerful is that? So again, it goes back to the ecosystem, right? Of building the intimacy. Here's something I just pulled up today, guys. Look, this is a podcast called Podtales, podtales.org. This is an online festival of audio drama and fiction podcasting. So I'm not sure if this is your genre, but there are now conferences and virtual events that are now marrying podcasts with authors and writers and different fiction and nonfiction books. So this is something as maybe for a lot of you to look into and research to see if there's an opportunity for you to share your books and share your stories with these conferences, because people are watching and listening. So let me go back here. What happened here? Let's see. Boom, here we go. Yeah. Okay, so questions, guys. Let me know what's on your mind. Ask me anything. Before we get to that, I just want to, if you're interested, Sandy mentioned it, and Amy's a part of it. Sandy's a part of this Pod Houston community. Join us. We are Houston-based, but we have podcasters from the UK, from New York, all over the world. So don't let Houston be like, a lot of people are like, is that only for Houston podcasters? No, this is for everybody. We have a bunch of people that are in there. So join, you can do in the search engine Pod Houston, and we'll pop up, and I'll make sure that I add you in there and give you a nice warm welcome like I do with everybody. And of course, if you want to connect with me, ozealmedia.com. I failed to mention in the beginning that in addition to podcasting, I am a podcast consultant. So I am a podcast coach. I have a mastermind called Pod Houston Insider, where we host monthly educational events every month. We talk about marketing and branding and storytelling. A couple weeks ago, we had one. It was about monetizing and building a podcast sponsorship package. So it's a great mastermind if you are looking to get surrounded by a bunch of podcasters that are really serious about podcasting. And then, of course, there's my email address. So if you want to reach out to me and have any additional questions after this, you can do so by emailing me as well. So let's get back to the questions, guys. Thank you.
Ozeal.
Yes.
I asked you a question back when we were doing the Indie Palooza, and so I asked if Author Talk is niche enough. And you suggested that maybe I choose or even make it more of a niche by picking a particular genre or something like that. So can you talk about that for a minute? Because I really do want to make sure we're niched as much as we can be.
So let me ask you this, Sandy, Author Talk. So is there a tagline? Do you have a tagline for Author Talk?
No, we honestly just, yeah. But I want to raise it up a notch or a few notches. So anything I could do to do that. And if niching it and tagline and all that, which would open the door that it could be more than one podcast, really. So
Yeah, I always challenge to niche it down just because I know the state of the podcasting world right now. But Author Talk, if I had to like really break down the brand, what I like about that, Sandy, is that it's very clear on what the podcast is about, right? It's about a bunch of authors talking. Okay, for somebody, if this is my first time listening to that, that brand, I'll be okay, cool. It's an Author Talk. It's, if I'm a writer, that's something that I will listen to. But maybe I would also include maybe a tagline to let the author know what they're going to get out of it, right? So it's educating today's author on something, or empowering authors through community and education, or something that gives us a little bit more of what we're going to get out of Author Talk. But it's pretty straightforward, Sandy. Of course, I would say if you really were focusing on nonfiction, then go that route, or fiction. But is it a pretty much general? Is it
yes,
pretty much
it's pretty
okay?
general. We
Okay.
have probably more fiction than nonfiction, but it's still not exclusive either way.
Okay. Yeah, because Author Talk is very kind of like a discussion, conversational, like it's very general. But what if I'm an author or a potential listener, if I plug into your podcast, my question is, what am I going to get out of it? Is it just going to be just me, a bunch of authors really talking about stuff, about author stuff, or what it's like to be a writer, or what am I going to get out of it? So as I mentioned before, Sandy, you have to kind of keep them in mind. If it's just you guys just kind of going around the circle and doing this, but they're not a part of it, because you build community when people feel like they're a part of something.
Right. Okay.
So as podcasters, keep that in mind and maybe figure out a way to include them in, and what's going to be their takeaway. Does that make sense?
It does.
Can
Thank
you-
you very much. Yes.
I have a
Anybody
question.
else? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, I'm Diane Bame, and I live in Houston. I started a YouTube channel just recently called The Story Garden, and my tagline is Embrace Imagination.
Mhm.
And in The Story Garden, it is geared towards having quality, safe books for authors to come and read and or share some of the highlights of their books. So in listening to you, I was thinking that if I took that the next level for a podcast, I could strengthen the interview of the author, because the interview in The Story Garden is just to give a taste to the parents who the author is and the beauty of their children's book. And it's a safe place for the kids to have a book read to them in case the mom or dad needs to cook or whatever.
Mhm.
So I was thinking maybe this could be an extension of that. Wanted to see what you thought.
Yeah, when I'm listening to it, absolutely 100%, Diane. I think that would be a great opportunity to kind of dig deeper into that conversation and really expand. As I mentioned, it's an expansion of what you're currently doing. And I think it'll be great for you to do that. So I think it's a no-brainer. I think you should at least experiment. And here's another thing, Diane, and all of you that are watching, experiment with seasons. If you feel like, I really don't want to commit to a whole year, just maybe do a season with maybe 8 to 12 episodes. And then you can take a break and then go back to the drawing board and figure out what you want to do, maybe rebrand, etc. But, you can always go seasonal. One of the things that people do, Diane, is that they'll say, okay, well, I don't want to commit to every week. So be realistic. Maybe do one every other week, once a month. But ideally, maybe like I started seeing growth like one episode per week, but you can do one every other week or seasonal. But yeah, as I'm listening to you, Dan, I think it'll be great for you to do that. So are you saying interview, right? You're going to be interviewing the authors?
I do both sometimes.
Okay.
I have now 2 groups because I had enough parents say, would you please start doing chapter books
Okay.
with older kids? So that was
Love
quite
it.
nice, right?
Yeah.
So I have the younger kids books, and then I have the older. I do a lot of my own reading because I've been collecting books since I was very young,
Mhm.
A young teacher, I should say. So that's why it's called The Story Garden. I probably getting off task for you, but I totally got off for the question you asked, but I'm just trying to think. The authors only get a teeny tiny little interview before they start reading their story, and then we wrap it up, because an average child can only, sit for so long. So I try to make it no longer on the YouTube channel than 15 minutes.
Right.
Unless it's for the older kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, gotcha. So you currently have a YouTube channel where you're doing this
Correct.
already. Gotcha. Yeah. And what YouTube is playing a big role, a lot of podcasters and podcast listeners are gravitating towards YouTube.
Mhm.
But now we're seeing that a lot of them are now, if they can't watch it, they're going to see if you have a podcast.
Right.
So a lot of I'm not sure if you're familiar with Joe Rogan, which is a big podcast figure. He has a huge fan base, and he's a YouTuber that has an interview show. Well, he just got signed a major contract with Spotify, millions of dollars. But now people go to his YouTube channel, but he also has a podcast where it's like, I can't watch it, but I still want to listen to it. So
Right.
now they just go and download it, and they still have this access to the same content. So you can multicast it, simulcast it, Diane. Yeah, absolutely. YouTube, take it, or you can expand, or you could just take the audio and put it as a podcast format and provide your listeners to that.
It
And
is-
that's one of the reasons we like Zoom. And so I do the Facebook Lives, or we record it on Zoom, because Zoom will give you the audio only
Mhm.
as well as the audio and video.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be getting with you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another resource that I love. It's a hidden gem. Nobody's really talking about this one, but for people that use Zoom, go use this. There's a software. I believe it's web based. Rivers. Yeah, let's see. I need to put it in the chat room, but it's riverside.fm. Much better than you than Zoom. I have a love-hate relationship with Zoom simply because, as you know, Sandy, the connection could be kind of wonky a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And, and it's just honestly is not the best audio quality. And I'm really big on audio quality. So can you see this, by the way?
Yeah.
Riverside? Okay, cool. So Riverside. So record remote interviews that look and sound great. So their thing is that they're going to make it sound amazing. And they give you 2 tracks, which allows you in post-production to really modify and make sure the audio quality sounds great. So let's say I'm interviewing Sandy, but her audio quality isn't great. With this Riverside.fm, I can really make some changes on the back end to make her sound just as good as my sound. So Riverside.fm is something that a lot of podcasters see. There you go. See, they use comparisons here. I don't know if you can hear. Maybe not. Okay, so you can try that. So record it with Zoom, record it with Riverside, and just check it out. I think it's a great resource. So Riverside.fm is something for a lot of people that are now, especially in this virtual world that we're living in, people are now doing a podcast and video. And I think using something like Riverside.fm could allow you to do the video, put it on YouTube, but also give you the audio where you can upload it to a podcast.
Zeal,
Yes.
we're planning on doing a podcast. We're thinking about one, more than just thinking about it, but we had done blogs for a while.
Mhm.
We're going to try and turn those into a podcast. Now the blogs were mainly writer tips and writer helps. Like we talk about different subjects, like how to develop character, things like that. I have seen I started researching, I see a lot of people out there doing that sort of podcast. So my question is this: is the market really saturated with those type of things? And who is your real customer on that? Is it just other writers, or do readers also kind of like look into that? I'm a publishing company, by the way, so
Okay.
we publish people.
Okay.
And so from your perspective and from your expertise, because I'm sure you must have heard much more than I have.
So just to be clear, and what is your name again, my man?
James.
James. Okay, awesome. That's my son's name. So James, I love the name. James, so you're asking, you have a blog post and you're saying that is it worth using voice to voice the blog post and put that on a podcast?
Sort of like that, yeah. I don't want to just read what I wrote as a
Okay.
blog post. I want to take the idea of the blog post that I've written and
Repurpose.
those into a podcast. So we discuss what was written, not so much as just reading what I wrote.
No, of course. So kind of
Even new stuff, right, James? Because you're not going to just do the blogs you've already done. You're going to be doing, so it would be like a publishing.
also,
stuff.
like a repurpose, like you're repurposing pretty much the written form, but you're adding your own
Mhm.
voice. James, do it because I think what you're seeing now, as a matter of fact, and I'm going to introduce you, Sandy and Amy, to this guy. He's a friend of mine out in LA, very successful independent writer. He is now, we're talking about it. And I kept on telling him, go audiobook, man, audiobook. And he has, and he got a deal with a independent audiobook company out in Austin. And he's doing really, really well. And he's selling books, and he has, so I'll make sure that I introduce you to him. So he was telling me, James, that he was doing a blog post as well. And then I was on him telling him, hey, you should get into podcasting. So he would get the blog post, very similar to what you were doing, and he was repurposing, and he was making so the blog post, it could have been like maybe a minute read, but he was really riffing off the blog post and adding and bringing on a different kind of energy to it. And it really helped him with his podcast, his website traffic, and also his book sales. So yes, absolutely. You're seeing also a lot of writers do audiobooks, but they're giving you exclusive audio content that the book does not provide, right? So the book only gives you so much, right, in written form, but the audio allows you to kind of go off a little bit. And as a matter of fact, these publishing companies are saying, no, do that. Like if you go off rail, go off and explain and elaborate more on ideas, because people like that. So that's already a proven strategy, and people are really enjoying that. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, as I mentioned, and I love it when I pick up the book and I read the audiobook. The audiobook gives me a whole different energy, and they really expound on a lot of the topics that the book doesn't. So yeah, man, I think you should totally experiment with it, elaborate on it. And I think it'll be a great opportunity for you to just, once again, humanize those words and repurpose them and then kind of add some life to it. So you should totally do it. And to the last part, is it oversaturated? No, because nobody's doing it, guys. A lot of authors are not. If I was a writer, I would totally be podcasting. I would have my books and I would tell you everything that I'm doing, because it doesn't take a lot for you to start a podcast. And I think that if I want to build and I want to have book sales, I think as a listener, I would want people to kind of know what my brand and what I am as a author, as a writer. Again, you're humanizing yourself. And I think people are now gravitating towards personal brand because they want to know what the author's thinking. They want to know what you were thinking when you wrote that verse. Right? What was the premise behind it? What was the back end story that inspired you to write the book? That could all be rich content on your audio podcast that you can give them, that a bio, that a blog post can give them. Does that make sense, James?
Yeah.
I'm passionate about this. I can go on and on and on, man, but I feel like you can do something with it. And I feel like it could be a great opportunity for you to really do something special with the content, because you already have the content already online. You got it there. All you got to do, man, is get yourself a mic, a laptop, publish it. And now people get to hear your voice and get to hear you riff all those ideas, but give it a different life. I think it'll be cool, man.
I'm good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Oziel?
Yes,
This
Jeremy.
is Jeremy. I have lots of things that I've been thinking about. This is definitely something I plan to do in 2021.
Awesome.
Time is a factor, though, for me. So I would say that writing is a thing. We're all authors.
Mhm.
The type of publication that I do is a tabletop role-playing game. So I'm artist, illustrator, writer, designer, formatting, all of it in one bucket. And not that I don't have a support team around me. However, a lot of it is me on my own. So getting the book out itself is a lot of time and effort plus a day job, right? And then I started doing YouTube podcasts, but I made them very short because but even that time to to make something so short was a lot of editing. Or a podcast, I wouldn't have to do as much editing because it's just a time slot and I'm just talking or riffing,
Mhm.
like you just said, which is great. And though, even if I do, a lot of podcasts out there are an hour, sometimes more. That's a lot of time. 30 minutes, is that okay for a podcast? Are people going to listen, or does that just seem like cheap and it's like, okay? And where do you find time in all of this stuff you do to add a podcast to your bundle? Just for me, it's a
I get
thing.
it, man.
And I know that once the books are out, so for example, this is a trilogy. Once the trilogy's out, so say sometime in spring, okay, yes, maybe so. But then there's like 14 other books after the trilogy, so it's just time. Yes,
No,
but
I
I would
get
love
it.
this, and time is the thing.
So, Jeremy, I would say, in regards to the length of time, great question. They did a study by Buzzsprout, which is a big hosting company in the podcasting world. 20 to 25 minutes is a sweet spot you should shoot for. Yeah. Less is more. I think when you have these massive, long episodes, the big celebrities can pull it off, but whenever you're independent creative, I think it's going short form is better. 10 to 15 minutes. As far as time, Jeremy, I do a lot of content. So I'll set a day where, like, let's say a Monday or a Sunday, and I'm like, I'm going to knock out these 4 episodes. Jeremy, it's, 10, 15 minutes. You can knock it out in a few hours.
Right.
You leave it in there. You have the MP3, you upload them. I love your approach, by the way. You just said, hey, listen, I'll just record it and then I'm not going to do much editing. And that's beautiful, because one of the things that a lot of people get scared in regards to podcasting is, well, I'm going to podcast, but then I got to edit and then I got to clean it up and both. No, listen, guys, people don't want robots. What I've discovered is that people don't care about the uhs and the ahs. There's a lot of podcasters that get caught up on trying to take out all the imperfections. But I love your approach. Just record it, share. You can clean it up a little bit, and then take one day to batch it, and there you go. You have a month of just audio content ready to go in the can, Jeremy. And in regard, I would love to see, what's your genre, by the way?
It's tabletop role playing. So my genre is sci-fi fantasy.
Sci-fi.
So,
Okay.
Sci-fi fantasy. But the pod, or the my concept around the podcast would be particular to my game, and then one general. So it's a dual time a week, one on one day, one on
Okay.
another day.
Yeah.
One is specific to my game and my genre, and then one that's general about tips and tricks on how to just be an awesome
Okay.
at role playing.
Yeah. Yeah. See, a podcast will work for that. Yeah. I think that
Yeah.
you have for that. Yeah. I mean, it's so.
It does. The only thing I've struggled with is time. So you mentioned Riverside, and I will look into it if that's an
Yes.
easy go, because if I can just record and it's a super easy upload to YouTube, it's a super easy upload to whatever
Super easy.
RSS feed that I'm going to do, then great. That sounds awesome. The other question I had was about guests. So
Mhm.
is it okay to not have guests?
Yes. So
Okay, great.
yes. If you want to build
I
influence,
see a lot. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts that have
interviews.
guests. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, is this this is how you're successful at it, is to have guests?
Yeah. So I always say this: if you want to expand your network, start an interview-based podcast to expand your network, to get people within your genre, right? And you're building relationships. But if you want to build influence and impact, solo cast. Just share you.
Or is it okay to do it once a month to do interviews? And
Absolutely.
that's enough?
Absolutely. So you can do a hybrid, Jeremy. Absolutely. There's no rule. So you can do maybe, 3 solo shows and then 1 interview, or maybe every other week, switch it up. But yeah, you don't have to do interview based. Those are the popular ones. There's people who do like panel type of podcast. I mean, there's different styles, but I think in your case, I think a hybrid, but more you. I think that would be great. Plus, you had the cool headset, man. You kind of look like a podcaster already, dude.
I'm an interpreter, so this is my station where I do sign.
I need one of those because I talk on my hand.
I'm one of those, right?
But you should definitely start one.
I have a question.
Hi, Julie.
Hi. You mentioned that you recommend that we have 3 or 4 things in the can before we launch our thing. So I'm assuming there's some kind of feature, like if I want to do a blog, I can tell WordPress what day to release that particular blog, so I could schedule out for a month, release it every month, release this one this Monday, the next one the next Monday. And so what you're suggesting is that there's also that feature with wherever we place our podcasts that you could.
Correct. Boom. I just put it in the chat room. So there's this hosting company that I use called buzzsprout.com. And what you can do there, Julie, is that once you have your MP3, you upload it to buzzsprout.com. Super easy. And if you need help, Julie, I can help you out with that. You can upload it and you can schedule. You can say, Buzzsprout, I want episode 2.1 to be released this Tuesday at 6 a.m., the following on next Tuesday, and you can schedule all of your content. That's what I did with the podcast. My last podcast project, I scheduled a month and then I was done. And then I was just waking up and it was already published. So yeah, that's a way to kind of facilitate that. Hands off.
Ozil, what is anchor.fm? Is that also a place where you can you upload multiple
You
episodes?
can't, Sandy. You can't. So anchor.fm, guys, and you guys can check it out. A lot of people are starting their podcast because you can actually you can start your podcast through your phone. You can download anchor.fm and you can start a podcast. There are a lot of limitations. One of them, Sandy, is that you can't schedule your content out.
That's good. That's good to know. Okay.
Yeah. So Buzzsprout you can, Libsyn you can, but Buzzsprout is the one that I recommend.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that is one of the things we've been doing is I've been helping some of the people that want to do a podcast because I love doing them. I love interviewing. I've always been good at it and I love doing that. And so that's what I've been doing with a few of the clients. So that's great. I love that because we were using anchor.fm. That would be good. I'll check out the Buzzsprout then. Yeah,
Buzzsprout is whenever you deal with your clients, Sandy, are you hosting their podcast on their website?
Yes.
Or is this okay? Perfect. Okay. So whenever you use anchor.fm, guys, it's basically a company that says, hey, you can start your podcast with us, but they own a lot of your content. Okay. Of course, they say that you own it and you can always change your RSS feed, but you're starting it on their home base. A lot of you are authors. I'm sure all of you have your website. If not, you own your website, but you want to host your podcast on your domain, on your website. You want to own your own, as I mentioned earlier, your radio tower. When you start hosting podcasts on other people's platform, if they pull the plug on you, you're done. So you want to make sure that you own your content on your .com or .net. And that's just the way to go to own it. So highly recommend
I really
it.
only have one that we've gotten that
Okay.
far. But yes, and that one we do have it on his website. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And also in regards to kind of promoting your books, guys, like really reach out to, we have podcasting community, right? So we have Pod Houston, and there are a lot of people that are looking for you to interview you on their show. So I think podcast is also a great marketing component to start thinking about when you release a book. Go on Google or go to a community, put sci-fi podcast and look for ones that are within your genre and reach out to them and say, hey, I released this book. Here's a copy of my free book. You provide all that value to them, give it to them. I would love for you to check it out. And I would love to be on your show if you're looking for guests. And if you're on their show, it's more brand awareness for your books to promote your books. So that's another component. If I was a writer, I would be jumping on the podcasting wagon, not only as a podcaster, but also how can I get on other podcasts to promote and build brand awareness around the book that I'm promoting.
Ozil,
Yes, Red, what's up?
good to see you again. It's
Likewise.
when you're an author, not if you're an author.
What's that? What's that?
When you're an author, not if you're an author.
If, yes. Oh, that's right. Okay.
When.
You are all authors, right?
So I have a follow-up then. You mentioned also that you don't have to make a lifetime commitment. You can have a season. So what would a typical season be? Because one of my things that is kind of holding me back is I want to be free to travel. I don't want to
Mhm.
be chained to Houston, Texas for the rest of my life.
Oh, Julie, traveling, you could do the podcast from wherever you are.
Yeah.
Oh no, Sandy, believe me, I tried. I talk about this in my book. I tried to do the internet from northern Spain, and
Well, that's true. That
it
is
just
true.
was impossible. I was so frustrated. I'm not trying that again.
But
No,
Julie, how many years ago was that?
that was 2016. It wasn't so
Yeah,
long
no,
ago.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So Julie's like, no to podcasting while I travel. Leave me alone. I'm in my own world. Let me just focus on what I want to focus on. Well, Julie, you know what? It's all about what I was telling Jeremy. It just, you have to have a plan. And I think that's another common mistake that I should probably add to this presentation is that poor planning. I think that if you say these are going to be 10 episodes, right? I'm going to release, 8 episodes total for this season, and then just dedicate yourself to 1 or 2 days and knock all of it out. Plan it out and say, I'm going to do this for 4 hours and the next day 4 hours, and you're done, Julie. And that's it. You just upload it to Buzzsprout, you schedule them out, and voila, season 1 is done. So I think that, the thing about podcasting is that the heavy lifting is in the beginning. But once you set everything up, you're done. I mean, everything else is going to be basically marketing the episodes when they're released. But to publish a podcast episode doesn't take a long time. You just have to structure and batch your content. So front load it. That's I always tell people, front load your content.
So, but my question was like, when I think of seasons, it's like TV. So
Mhm.
there'll be 8 episodes for the fall and 8 episodes for the spring or whatever. What would a podcast season look like?
I would say maybe 8 to 12 episodes, and there's some that are like longer than that. But yeah, I've seen short form. I've seen short season. Actually, I know somebody within the Pod Houston community who has an 8 episode season. She's at like season 10. She has 8 episodes per season. So I mean, there's really no rules, Julie. I mean, it really comes down to what's realistic and what can you put out to your channel. So if you want to do 8 episodes per season, then that works.
I
And
know
if you
Julie-
only do 8, I'm sorry, Sandy.
Go ahead,
if-
Diane.
But if you only do, let's say, 8 episodes and you're brand new and you're trying to build your podcast, isn't it a little difficult?
Too difficult to build,
develop
maybe grow.
Your following, right?
It's a little tough, but if you can take maybe a month off, like you have to be very, very strategic in how you log off. So I think 8 episodes and maybe a couple weeks off and then come right back at it. Yeah, if you really
But
want
if
to see the growth.
you, let's say, so for example, I knew on for a while, and so I did about 30 copies of me for YouTube, and then I scheduled it out.
Mhm.
So it looks like every day I have something new, but I haven't actually done anything. So what you could do is you could have 8 episodes, or you could do seasons, but if you can schedule it out, you could be gone for a whole year, but you've already done all your work. And,
Right.
and that way you don't lose your following, correct?
Right, correct. Exactly. Yeah, you don't want it to completely like just disappear. You want to have some, and let your listeners know, hey guys, I'm going to be, this is the end of season 1. However, you can check out other content. I'm going to be on YouTube, or you can follow me on social media. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you let them know that you're not disappearing. They can still have access to it. To your
But see, I
content.
see that people are starting to leave. So give one more
About that
plug
time,
to Pod Houston,
One
and
more
what
question.
do we need to do to join
One more
Pod
question.
Houston?
Oh, one more question. We got one more question here.
When you talk seasons, are we talking 1 a week when you say like 8 episodes or 10 episodes? You saying 1 a week or 1 a month? How often do you actually put out a podcast?
For a season, I would say, James, I would say once a week, I think would be good. Yeah, once a week is where I really you'll start seeing some growth. Because that, especially in the beginning as a new podcaster, you want to be able to cultivate that trust and that consistency. So if they see that you're delivering an episode a week, for 2 months, I think that'll be a great way to build some traction. And you'll start seeing a little bit of growth coming up from listenership. So yeah, once a week at least.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay, now Pod Houston.
Pod Houston. Yes, guys. Pod Houston, join us so that way we can stay in touch. Even if you haven't started a podcast, get in there because we have a lot of podcasters that are looking for people to interview as well. So you can say, hey, I'm releasing a book, sci-fi. Would anybody be interested? And of course, we have a Pod Houston Insider Mastermind if you're interested as well. And our website is podhouston.com is the website for more information. We also are going to host a lot more virtual events in 2021. So please join us.
Where do we
Yes.
go to join the insider group?
So it's at podhouston.com/membership.
Okay, got it.
Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, for asking
Yes,
that.
I absolutely believe, I believe in memberships. I think
Mhm.
the masterminding part of that and the contacts, the community building, all of it is great. So
I would say, Sandy, community is a new currency. And I think that
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
if you surround yourself around people with the accountability and the people that are constantly leveling up, you have people that are just kind of getting by, and then you see people that are investing in themselves. And I think those are the people that, have success in whatever thing that they're doing. So we have actually about 13 members right now, podcasters that are in the health and wellness industry, to fitness, to entrepreneurship. So absolutely, I'm glad you mentioned that, Sandy. I know you have an amazing group here, and it was great to connect with all of you. And I look forward to just helping you and seeing you online in the near future.
And you talked about the currency. What I love is in this world, the world we live in now, you can borrow each other's currency or community. So that's why I want Ozil to come and get to know our group. And then we have an email list that I would love to Ozil send out some information about you there.
Thank
And
you.
so I just firmly believe that that's how it works, and it definitely lends to the future success and to getting the right kind of success, meeting the right kind of people. So thank you very much, Ozil.
Absolutely.
Great as always.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. And Sandy and Amy, can you, whenever you get a minute, not tonight, but maybe tomorrow, can you email me all of the websites of everybody? I just want to support them. James, I want to check out what you're doing. Jeremy, Diane, Julie, David, I want to just check out your work, support it, follow you guys on social media. And of course, I'll hit you up if I see some opportunities there where we can kind of help with the voice marketing and the podcast.
That is very generous.
I will let the support.
Very,
Absolutely.
very generous. So yes, we'll definitely do
Please.
that. So
Please.
have a great rest of the evening. We'll see you
Thank
guys.
you guys.
Okay, remember, no mastermind on Friday. Have a great, happy Thanksgiving, and don't eat too much because Friday we hit the Black Friday markets for book sales. So see you guys then.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy.
Bye.